It's so important that that you guys, the viewers, understand that the steps Dr. Judy is explaining have to be done a certain way. It has to come from this calm, simple, patient, non-judgmental space. There's someone in your life, you think they're experiencing suicidal ideation. How do you approach them to start to have this difficult conversation?
Well, it's going to be a tough conversation because when they're in that mindset, they're not necessarily going to be open to talking to you about it, really. And they're going to maybe be even agitated and push you away. And this is something that sometimes depressed people do anyway, even without the suicidal ideation, because they're just feeling so down and there's so much self-loathing and just self-dislike that any kind of positive attention, they just want to push away and they don't even want to recognize it. And so it's similar when somebody is in a state where they've been contemplating suicide. In some ways, they do want you to pay attention to them, but in other ways, they almost don't want you to. It's almost like, just leave me alone so I can just do what I want already and maybe carry it out. And so I think you have to approach them somewhat gingerly, but not with such kitty gloves. I think sometimes people are afraid to talk to people when they think that this might be part of the picture. Like, oh, I don't want to disturb them and possibly veer them into more stress, and then they're going to kill themselves and it's going to be my fault. Don't ever think that, because by you being there, you might be saving their life. And so it does require a lot of patience. It requires a lot of open-mindedness, but it does require assertiveness as well. So you may just begin the conversation with, I've noticed that you've been, and then list off the behavioral characteristics that you've been noticing. And when I say behavioral characteristics, I mean things that are more factual, that you can see, that anybody can see. Like, you've been hiding in your room a lot more. When we try to talk to you, you yell at us. You've been talking about how the world would be better if you weren't in it. Say the things that actually reflect back to the person, the things that you've observed, rather than trying to make a statement about what you think they're thinking about. But list those behaviors, list those observations, and say, I'm really concerned about you. What's going on? Leave the question open-ended so that they can fill in the blanks and reply to that. And if they're not giving you much back, if they're being very short with their answers or don't bother me, I'm fine, that's when I think you really have to go in and say, I'm concerned that you might be thinking about hurting yourself. Are you thinking about that? And let them respond to that particular question. If they're still not giving you anything, but you're still concerned and they haven't convinced you that they're being safe, I think that's when you have to step in and say, I am very concerned and I don't feel safe leaving you by yourself today, and I'm gonna stay here until so-and-so comes home, or I'm gonna stay here until maybe we can go to your therapist together to talk about this, or I'm gonna stay here, and if you're saying that this is not an issue for you, then hopefully you won't mind that I'm going to call the suicide hotline while you're here, because I'm worried about you, and even if you say that that's not what you're thinking, I'm not convinced, and I'm going to call them in your presence. So you do have to sort of wedge yourself in there a little bit, and you should expect a pushback, because they're not necessarily going to be welcoming you with open arms.
That's good for people to realize, because I think the thought process would be that if I'm doing my job correctly, they should be responding positively. But in actuality, a negative response may just be indicative of the situation and not necessarily your approach.
Right. Absolutely. And I think there, of course, is a subset of people who the suicidal ideation that they've been experiencing is kind of a cry for help. And then when you start to probe them more, they might actually look very relieved, like, oh, thank goodness, because I was thinking about doing it yesterday, and but then I actually really didn't want to. Like, now that we're talking about it, I'm realizing I didn't want to. Yeah, you're going to get that subset of individuals too, but I don't think you would expect that. You shouldn't expect that, in fact, because the person who is thinking about suicidal ideation, they're not necessarily in their most logical mind. So they're not going to respond in a logical fashion. And you do have to be aware of that and sort of be prepared for any kind of response under the sun. Children and teenagers have a really hard time thinking ahead. They don't have that executive function development yet. It's not fully complete. And so for them, it's important to let them know that it's not always going to be this way. And for them, that's still a vague idea. So you're not really necessarily going to tell them, well, when you're 18, this won't matter, because they're like, 18 sounds like
98.
Yeah, you're a dinosaur because you're my mom and you're 40, right? I mean, so it's like this idea that like they can't think that hard and that far ahead, but you can just tell them it's not always going to be this way, sweetie. It might be a different day tomorrow, and it might be a different day the day after that. But that's really kind of the level in which you should be talking to them, is like, don't just think that you're going to get stuck here, but you don't want to use too much future talk with them that's too lengthy, because they won't understand that conceptualization. They will only think about the pain that they're in now and think that that's just how it's always going to be in their life.
Can a parent ask a 10-year-old, are you thinking about killing yourself?
Yes, and they should.
And they should.
Because again, children are much more concrete. They're not quite as abstract. And so if you say something like, you're not going to do something stupid, will you? That's an abstract question that could mean a bunch of things.
Anything, right.
Like being stupid could be you going skateboarding at night. I mean, it could be so many things. And also, when somebody is in the mindset of wanting to hurt themselves, they may not think that that's a stupid idea. And furthermore, once they figure out that you were referring to hurting themselves as a stupid idea, they feel even more judged, and that could actually increase their feelings of hopelessness.
It's so important that that you guys, the viewers, understand that the steps Dr. Judy is explaining have to be done a certain way. And what I mean by that is, you can't just go in and say, hey, Timmy, are you thinking about killing yourself? They're gonna be like, no, sorry, like they don't wanna get in trouble. It has to come from this calm, simple, patient, non-judgmental space. So parents especially have to get themselves together before they go in and have these conversations. Because the doctors are so good, right? You and Dr. Myers and Dr. Dom and Dr. Robbie, you guys are so good at explaining how to do it because you've done it 100 times in therapy. But for parents, it might be their first time ever having this conversation. So I even say to a few friends who have called me, I go, you've got to practice this. This is almost like a script, and you're in a movie and you've got to deliver this a certain way. Because if you don't, you're not going to get the same results. I'm so glad that you're bringing up these points, because those are great tips that parents should get themselves together a little bit more emotionally before they go, and you can't just be charging in with tears down your eyes. I mean, if you cry naturally when you learn that your child is thinking about it, fine, but you should not be going in emotionally charged. You should be going in prepared, and you should be going in knowing that you can be authentic once you're there, so that when they say, yeah, I am thinking about killing myself, and look, I even bought a noose. Wow. I mean, when you see that as a parent, you're probably going to cry, you're going to have an emotional reaction, and that's fine. But again, as a parent, even in that moment, it's important that you tell the child why that's happening. Like, I'm not crying because I'm mad at you. I'm just crying because I'm so sad. And this is not a judgment, and I'm sorry, you know, that you feel this way. And I'm just deeply sad for you, and which is why I'm crying, right? As opposed to, whoa, why is my mom and dad out of sorts right now? And I do think that practice does make perfect, and that it is a good idea to maybe even jot down the main things you want to get across. Like, boom, step 1, here's the question I want to ask. Step 2, like, if they do admit to it, here's what I want to convey. It's not silly to like bring in a little card to make sure that you've actually covered the things that you think are the most important to cover. Your child's not even going to remember that about that moment a year or two from now. They're just going to remember what you said to make them feel better. Mom was there.
They're going to remember the feeling. And that's what people don't realize. Like, that parents, like, you know, you can make all these kinds of mistakes, but your children will remember the times in which you were there for them and the emotions that they felt when they felt safe. So that's really, I think, the key. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Absolutely. What should people not do?
Well, people definitely should not make them feel like they're not being appreciative or grateful. Like, how could you kill yourself? You have so much going for you. That's awful, because the person probably already thought of that. And they already feel bad about themselves. Like, man, I should be more grateful, but instead I just want to end my life. What's wrong with me? You know? And so if you bring that up, they're going to feel even worse. But sometimes people think that's going to motivate them somehow, like that they haven't somehow thought about the fact that maybe their lives aren't really that bad. And I think that is not a motivating factor. I also don't think it's a motivating factor to try to scold them and scare them into not doing it. Like, sometimes I will see people or hear people do things like, oh, do you know how much that's going to hurt? How stupid are you to like try to do this method? Like, that's going to hurt so bad. They don't care about that in that moment. They're not thinking about that, because guess what? The pain that they're feeling in that moment where they want to take their life is so much more than what you're describing.
That's right.
So you're just not going to move them that way. And finally, I think it's important that people don't then sort of put their own issues on that person in that moment. I think that sometimes people make it about themselves. And they will say, well, if you killed yourself, what would I do? Like, again, that individual likely has thought about that. You're a loved one, you're some concerned person that's an important part of their life, and they've already thought about that. And the more that you do that, the more selfish they feel, the more it increases their self-loathing. And self-loathing can be another risk factor to increase suicidality. So
That's right.
let's let those ideas go, and just, that's not the moment to make it about yourself. You can decompress later with a friend or with your therapist. You can deal with that at another time. Right now, you're in crisis mode and you need to be there for that person.
That is right. If it is an emergency, what is this action to take?
If it is an emergency, then you can ask the individual if you would be okay taking them to the hospital. That maybe it's time for us to go to the emergency room for an evaluation. And sometimes the person will go willingly. If they do not go willingly, then you call 911 and you ask for a PET team. A PET team is a psychiatric evaluation unit, a psychiatric evaluation team. And these are law enforcement individuals who are trained in how to assess somebody for imminent safety and imminent risk for suicide. And they will come out and they will assess the individual, and if they find that the individual is at imminent risk, they will take that individual and transport them in an ambulance to the ER. And so I think when things get that dire, you can't wait. You're gonna have to pick up that phone and call 911 if the individual will not go to the emergency room with you.
Yeah. Dr. Judy, is there anything else that viewers should know when it comes to talking to somebody who has suicidal ideation?
Well, I would say that although not everything is going to be a state of emergency, if you notice any signs, don't wait. Have the conversation.
Yeah.
The worst thing that could happen is a person gets a little annoyed with you or laughs at you and says, no, I'm not thinking that, don't worry about that. But the best thing that could happen is that you could save that person's life and you could put them on a better mental health trajectory. So just talk to them about it.